just try sharing my screen. As that works.
We're waiting. Oh yes, that's successful. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Okay, right. I'll begin by showing everyone a picture of what, for most of the mid-20th century, is thought to be the stemma of family 13, just so people know what I'm talking about. In looking at Geerlings' question from his article in the 1940s, is manuscript 86 the archetype of family 13A? You'll see that this is the subgroup I've outlined in green on the left of this stemma, which has both everything deriving from hypothetical exemplars, but quite possibly there are hypothetical intermediaries that have not been detected just by putting hypothetical witnesses at the point where the stemma bifurcates. So what Geerlings' question was is that circle just basically 826? And because he put a question in an article title, obviously the answer is no, and he came up with these 6 readings that suggested that the answer was no. But Lafleur, in his book on Family 13 and Mark, has already spotted that one was an erroneous collation. That's actually true of another. And 3 more relate to corrections in 826. And Geerlings was aware that might be an issue. He says the correction would be made by a scribe. In fact, where he says that, it was made by the first-hand scribe. So that just leaves one of Geerlings' readings, and this is a bit bedeviled by the usual suspects. It's context, parallel, 543 is already playing with the text in that phrase. But, you know, we can throw questions out there about that. So rather than just making a negative case, I'd like to move on to making a positive case on the relationship between 543, the best witness on the next rung down in family 13A, and 826, the putative exemplar. Now, thankfully, Alan Taylor Farnes, in his wonderful 2018 Birmingham PhD thesis, go and read it, has put together a checklist of types of arguments that one might wish to advance. The first 3 are pretty much circumstantial. The second 3, we might have some smoking guns in there. So let's rattle through them quickly. First one, percentage agreement, we can say yes. You can see 826 there, almost consistently at the top. In Bruce Moll's dissertation, he found 2 variants from 543. So we can say, tick that one off. The second one, peculiar dual agreements, we run into similar problems as Farnes himself did with the 2 copies of DO6 in the Pauline epistles. Now, an issue that Farnes looked at was copies that were too bad. Here we have pretty much the flip side, that 826 is almost too good as an exemplar. And we also have the textual congestion caused by other members of family 13A, meaning that there are actually very few agreements that can be narrowed down to that much. But on the flip side, we can turn it around and, Lafleur found that 86 only had dual agreements with 543, and Geerlings went into quite some minutiae, but we can do better than that. Here's an example of a fantastic dual agreement. It's in the very final verse of the Gospels, and you can see on the left that 826 leaves out a word and a half. So instead of graphitae kathen, it says graphen. So you can see on the right it's been corrected later in 543 by the person who actually reinforced the text where it was fading at the beginning of the Gospel of John. So we can then move on to historical considerations. I'm going to just skip through this pretty quickly. The lister tries to hedge this based on allowing for various interpretations of paratextual evidence, but paleographically, everyone's confident that 543 is from the 12th century. 826 10th to 11th, most people phrase it as 11th. The Lister notes Georgi Parpilov. Actually, this has been out-argued many times. In fact, Marco D'Agostino points out, based on certain quotes of the hand, it's a known hand. And this is an amusing phenomenon that the manuscripts of the Acts and Pauline epistles are dated a century earlier, generally, than the ones of the Gospels. So, moving past historical concerns onto paleographical ones, here we're really hampered by the state of the images of 826. We can come up with paleographical questions, but in general, we can't answer the ones we want to ask. So we now come on to our smoking guns. So here we have the issue of corrections. In particular, does the copy stumble over corrections in the exemplar? And the answer here is yes. So here we have 86 at mark 1244 in the parable of the the periphery of the widow's mite, and the scribe makes a rare error writing the accusative perisseu onta for the genitive perisseu ontos, notices it immediately and overwrites it without erasure, leaving a letter that looks something between an omicron and an alpha. And you can see very clearly that it's overwritten by comparing it to how the alpha is written in gar in the line above. You can see that the scribe writes the bowl and then the hook of the alpha, but you can very much see that the bowl has been overwritten in the correction, despite the awful black and white images. So 543 comes along, misreads a correction, perisseu ontas, you know, technically it could be an accusative plural, but actually it's just a mistake. The scribe misread what was in front of him. And then there are ecological concerns, whether we can see evidence of the scribe of 543 knowing about line and column breaks in 826. Here, we would actually be able to come up with a huge number of examples if we had time for that. I mean, for instance, it's an interesting phenomenon where 543, where you get these readings of homoteleuton, they are facilitated by the line breaks of 826, and this is consistent. But we can do better. We've got an example that is not explicable by any simple mistake like homoteleuton. Here we have in John 7, on folio 184 verso of 826, at the foot of column 1, the scribe is running out of space. What we think is happening here is 826 is following the formatting and pagination of its exemplar, so it tries to squeeze a little in. It's quite common in 826. He runs into the margin or drops onto the next line and has just a little hanging word there. And here we have an instance of that at the end of the column. We have the verb mise just on a hanging line. And in 543, which is a more amply proportioned manuscript, we see in the line with the rubricated initial, the word on the hanging line, we say, is just omitted. And really, this sort of variant betrays knowledge of the line breaks and of 826. So this, I would argue, is the smoking gun. That's 543 knows what 826 looks like as an artifact. So, I mean, just to conclude with what does this all mean? I mean, yes, the contention that 826 is the archetype of the subgroup should be reopened as a possibility. But equally, people are looking at family 13 with more sophisticated methods these days. And really, as Robinson and Bertolecco pointed out with the Spipsdagmal material, this sort of example of known affiliation between two manuscripts is a good way of testing whether more sophisticated methods are putting out sensible answers. So there, I will conclude, and I can see I'm on 9:56 and I've done it. Thank you.
Super, James. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you again for giving us plenty of things to think about in terms of the evidence you presented. I can see lots of people applauding and putting their thumbs up, but I don't see any raised hands of questions just yet. So if there's nothing in the chat and nobody's raised their hand, can I pick you up on that very last point you made about how much sense is being produced elsewhere? Are you referring textually or also to the paleographical data which you introduced earlier?
Well, really, I'm thinking of it as a complete artifact, and you know, what I'm conscious of is going right back to the start with you know, creating an overall stemma. If you only have hypothetical ancestors, you can root it pretty much where you like, and I mean, one of the differences between Lake and Geerlings was that where Lake had the A and C subgroups branching off a subarchetype, Geerlings combined them. I would tend to go the opposite direction from Geerlings on that one. So if you come up with any type of stemma by some other methods, how to orient it is you know, the key question, and you know, and it's only by having known relations that you can add an extra degree of sense checking to the stemma that you are producing by more sophisticated methods.
Okay, super, thank you. And that almost leads perfectly into our next paper as well. So
Okay.
I'm scanning the screen, but I see no other immediate questions. So thank you again, James.